Good evening, everyone. This is Esther Thomas, Permanent Secretary, the Ministry of Trade, Commerce, Entrepreneurship, Innovation, Business and Export Development. Ms. Lisa Valmont, Permanent Secretary, the Ministry of Tourism, International Transport and Maritime Initiatives, Board of Directors, members, panelists, sponsors, partners, media partners, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. We'd like to thank you and welcome you to the open session of our 2020 Annual General Meeting. We would like to, first of all, thank all our members for being part of the chamber, because without you, we would not have a chamber to be at. We also want to thank our Board of Directors, our outgoing Board of Directors, as well as our incoming Board of Directors for their support, their volunteership, and their sacrifice for making the chamber successful. We would like to invite you to pay special attention as well to our annual general meeting report, which we will not go through in detail right now. We can't go through because it's an extensive document, but we invite you to look through the highlights of our 2019-2020 year, and feel free to speak to us about ways you think that the chamber can better serve you as a member or as someone from the business community, as well as if you're keen on joining the chamber, we invite you to do so. This evening, we have a very interesting panel for you. We have a panel which will be speaking on boosting Dominica's private sector through financial solutions and services. We want to pay special gratitude of our gratitude to our sponsors, the National Bank of Dominica and the Dominica Cooperative Societies League Limited, as gold sponsors for this year's AGM, as well as Republic Bank and First Caribbean International Bank for being our silver sponsors and making this financially and physically possible. Would you please give a round of applause for our sponsors? I would also like to welcome our new, or I would say the newest president in Dominica, who is Mr. Stephen Lambert. Mr. Lambert, we invite you to come to the front to address our members, our partners, our guests, as they hear from you for the first time as president of the Dominica Association of Industrial Students.
I didn't know I had to prepare for two speeches. All right. Thank you, Desra, and thank you to everyone again for the good of conference and share some ideas in there. For them to go out in the room. I'm pretty sure that you'll get to know about that in more detail as we move forward. But I just want to say that it is clear to me as I look forward that there will be a significant challenge for the private sector in the upcoming year. We know the context of the environment that we're in now, the challenges that we've been faced with the advent of COVID-19 and what impact it has had on the economy. So it's something that I look forward to working with the board on in terms of how we navigate those waters and create an economic environment where private sector can thrive. I don't think that there is that hope is lost. There's much that we can do. And I'll say thank you to Mr. Kennedy for laying on a pretty strong foundation on which I can continue to build with the new board to bring success for the chamber and its members in the community. So since Christmas is still prepping,
We're sharing the live.
Yeah, I would like to take the opportunity to share something with the group here, and I will ask you as well to circulate with you as well. But I think it's something that is worthy of mention. The Caribbean Bank across the region is made up of unsung heroes, unsung heroes for frontline workers. Unsung heroes is something that we do as part of our corporate social responsibility for a number of years, but this year in particular, we want to do something for those frontline workers who have gone the extra mile, so to speak, to keep us safe in the face of the pandemic. So we're looking at three categories of people. They're medical professionals, those in the protective services, and The third category would be any community member who has done something extraordinary over this year to assist or to the benefit of the wider community. Those persons can be nominated by any member of the community by going to the First Caribbean website, to the social media pages, and completing a nomination form. Obviously, you tell a little bit about the person's story, give a bit of background of what they've done and the impact that it's had on the community. And that information will go to a judging panel. And one person will win a $2,000 US equivalent value for a staycation at a motel of their choice in Dominica. We put this out publicly. There are media releases, and the information is on our website and on our social media pages, like I said. Nominations close Saturday. We've gotten a few nominations, but I think there's a lot more that can probably come in. So I want to encourage everybody in the room to take the opportunity. If you know someone who's done something extraordinary, to have a positive impact in the community, please go there and tell the story so that person has the opportunity to win this amazing prize of $2,000 US for staycation in all. So I encourage everybody to do that. And as I said, I'll ask Liz to share the actual communication with the membership list via email. Thank you.
Great.
Okay, so just so everybody has a clear idea as to who the board is involved. Guys, when I call it, please just stand up so everybody can see. So I was elected president. The vice president is Mr. Brenton here. Towards the back. Right, the treasurer is Mr. Joel Dennis of the National Bank. The treasurer is Ms. Daphne Esprit. Right. Sheldon Casimir in the back continues as our PRO. We have some continuing directors. John Robin is not here. Megan Sorrento. Kelly Drake. And then we have Jeffrey has been re-elected this year. And then new members, Chris John. Deborah Edwards, Saul. All right, and so that is the board that will serve for the upcoming operational year.
Thank you so much, Stephen. So we now move to our panel discussion. And as was mentioned, we'll be speaking about boosting our private sector through financial solutions and services. We have Mr. Stephen Lander, who is the country head for First Caribbean International Bank. We invite Mr. Joel Dennis, who is of National Bank of Dominica. Yes, so Mr. Joel Dennis is the Executive Manager of the Credit and Business Development Unit of the National Bank of Dominica. Mr. Felix Delfield, who is the General Manager of the Dominica Corporate Society. And unfortunately, Ms. Gina Savrat is very sick and she's unable to make it to this evening's AGM. So we'd like to welcome our panel. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. And this is a really important discussion because our private sector has been faced with one of the greatest challenges in, I would say, the entire history of Dominica. Do you agree? Do you still agree? Yes? Okay. I did not hear you. Thank you so much. ensuring that we have cordless minds for it. So in this panel discussion, we'll be exploring more about our financial institutions themselves and what they've been doing thus far and how they continue to support our private sector. We'll also be looking at how they work together with the public sector, or what policies that can enable us to boost our local private sector. We'll also be looking at our private sector itself from the position of the financial institutions and how they believe that our private sector can take more advantage of the opportunities that are available. And of course, we are in COVID-19 season, looking at how they have been affected, how they've been supporting their clients. And we believe that every business and every individual here this evening can learn something and can possibly get a new opportunity to advance your business. So, first of all, we want to ask you, how has COVID-19 affected your institution? COVID-19 is a hot topic right now. We just go straight to it. Any one of you? Who wants to start?
So, yes, for us, it's a matter of how do we rise to the challenge of the meeting our customers' needs in this new environment challenge. So, our customers have been greatly impacted, and we have to meet them where they are and provide the services that could help them to get better. And we have to do this while still honoring the restrictions placed to minimize the spread of the virus. So how do we ensure we have the staffing, the resources, and the structures in place to support the businesses as they navigate through that challenging time at the moment?
Okay, thank you for sharing about National Bank of Government. Stephen, how's it for you at FCIB?
So I'll echo what Joanna shared. Obviously, it is a different sort of environment that we're operating in. The needs of clients will change as the environment changes. Whenever we meet the road, for most of our clients is that their cash flow has been impacted. And so we have to be very flexible and still continue to be very flexible in how we treat with their obligations and what concessions we can make in terms of deferring payments, providing bridging finance facilities that can sort of stop the gap that has been created in terms of their revenue and so on. Digital comes into mind, right? Because this is something that we've been pushing for quite a while. But they say necessity is a mother of invention, is the same. But I think in this case, necessity was the mother of acceptance. The invention was already there, but people are becoming more aware and more in tune to the fact that these tools to use alternate channels, as we call them, to do their business, are real need, particularly in this environment, and that's what we're seeing.
Okay, so we spoke about the financial institutions from the position of the banks, but for credit union, how is that different? Is it different?
Not really. Pleasant evening to everyone. For us, we, in addition to those challenges mentioned, there is one thing that we continue to grapple with, and particularly so for our members. Some persons are looking to, while they're in the COVID situation, they're looking to the end of COVID. And we've been looking to see how we can get our members to think outside of the box or to think past COVID and to begin to articulate strategic directions for their businesses, even with COVID being present. And that really is the essence of our interventions with our members. Because there's a lot of uncertainty. So, for example, financial institutions, including ours, we've given deferments, we've given waivers, and members have come into us and talked to us, we've given them financial counseling and so forth. But the underlying situation for them is the higher level of uncertainty. And for us, is how do we get our members to navigate past this uncertainty and to see the opportunities that may abound. In fact, a rich guy once said, you should never let a crisis go to waste. And as Stephen said, there are many opportunities that are coming as a result of COVID. Some of them have forced us to accelerate those strategic directions that we would have planned for ourselves. Some of those have revealed us like an X-ray and given us this kind of inside look into the operation and strategic directions of our enterprises. And for us, this is what we're concerned, we consider as even critically important, because no amount of financial support or no amount of financial cushion is going to help any entity or business unless that business re-examines its strategic direction, see where the market is putting it, see what are the benefits that they can pull out from this situation, and to have that overall strategic revamping. And you've seen businesses are crumbling everywhere, not only within the Caribbean region, but also in North America and Europe. And what you've seen happening, they're separating what we call the wheat from the tare. Those who have set up themselves for a time like this are thriving. And those that have not, those that have shelved some of those ideas, Stephen mentioned about digital footprint and gaps, those that would have shelved it, those that would have stuck to the brick and mortar approach to business, they are now grappling. So what is it telling us from COVID, even from a financial institution standpoint, and also from business standpoint, is that we need to now present ourselves as opportunists in this environment. We need to re-examine our strategic focus. And then, and only then, can we capitalize? Because, for example, you can go to NBD and get a waiver, but what do you do with it? Is it just for capital gap, financing gap, to pay wages? Is it that you're looking to restructure your organization? And these are the things. So if you were taking critical liquidity support to only plug a gap and not to advance yourself strategically, then you would have wasted the opportunity.
Okay, so we understand a bit more of the financial institution's perspective. But in this audience and online, there are many businesses who may wonder, will the financial institutions really understand what I'm facing? Are they walking in my shoes? Maybe they sit from a different perspective and they don't really understand. So can you share with us what are the challenges that our business sector face? Do you understand, and can you share with us so that we can at least identify and then move forward? Who wants to go first?
I see the younger folks are looking at me.
I can share some comments on that. It's interesting. I mean, I made some comments earlier about data and that being the basis for making these decisions. And one of the challenges that we face, sorry to take the question for my benefit, is actually getting the private sector to respond to us when we ask questions about what is going on with bonds and business. Because unless we have a thorough understanding as to what the challenges are, in real terms, we're firing out solutions or proposed solutions in the blind. So, for example, when this thing first started, we pretty much gave a blanket sort of accommodation to clients. And now that we're a few months in, and we're getting in touch with clients again to say, we need a bit more detail as to what you're going to do. Because we need to be comfortable on what solution we can propose for you is actually going to be to solve the problem that you're facing. So, what I want to encourage the private sector to do is when that outreach occurs, be transparent. Share as much as you can, and let us understand your story in return so we can come up with a solution that fits your profile. Because there is not going to be any kind of one-size-fits-all situation, particularly when it comes to enterprises. Maybe individuals, yes, but not for enterprises. We need to understand your unique story, what you're going through, and formulate something that is going to help you.
Okay, but what's you, Joe?
Definitely, I agree with what you said, Stephen, because we as bankers, while you and I guess what we're facing, we won't know the unique strength until the customer tells us what they're facing. And Stephen says, share as much. I'm saying, share everything. You will tell us everything you're going through. That's the only way we can find solutions to help you navigate this storm. And that's why we have officers assigned to every customer, so they can spend the time with them, so they really get to know your business, know all the challenges you're being faced, so that when we do offer a solution, it's based on what you have told us and based on the situation as you have outlined it to us. So unless you actually take the time to tell us everything, there is no way we will understand and no way we will offer the solutions that will help you.
Okay, so you want more information, but what have you heard so far? Like, have you gotten anything?
Well,
any feedback?
Actually, yes. We did a survey. We did a survey a few months ago, and 610 persons participated in that survey. I'm just going to share with you briefly. Of this survey, you had about 26% of the persons concerned about personal and family health, 13% concerned about employment status, 11% concerned about impact on business, 3% concerned about social and travel life, 22% concerned about personal financial impact, 3% concerned about supply chains, 16% concerned about the impact on the economy. And what this has served us as a kind of microscopic look inside of the affairs of our membership. And one of the things that we continue to do, and even as a movement, this is sort of ingrained in our DNA, that closeness to the people that we serve. And in fact, that is why, for example, the credit unions have more than 25 branches and sub-branches located around the country. So we are located where the people we serve are. And because of that, that has afforded us an opportunity to continue to dialogue with them, and especially our small business entrepreneurs. They come into us, and we have what we call we do counsel as a financial institution. Some people will just come into us and ask something. Even, for example, if they're coming in to ask for, let's say, for a deferment or some level of financial support, we would ask the questions relating to how is it that your business is doing? Where do you see your business going? What are the major challenges? And a lot of the persons, like I said earlier, the major challenges of those small business entrepreneurs has been the uncertainty, more so than the financial inadequacies that currently, because they're saying that if there was a time stamp, as I don't want to mention President Donald Trump's name, but if there was a time stamp that we can say this thing is going to finish in 2 months, nobody will probably come back to support. They'll look to cushion it and wait until that time. But the thing is, that when you would have given some support 3 months and then it continues 3 months and then you hear it second and third cycle, it is the uncertainty that is affecting all sectors of the economy. And that is why we continue to ask our members, if uncertainty is your biggest challenge, then how are you strategically looking to shape your business? Okay,
well, thank you for sharing this. So as we've mentioned that you understand what's been happening with your clients, and you're also seeking more information, how have you been supporting the private sector thus far, post-COVID era? What have you done? We understand moratoriums, yes, but are there any other measures that you've taken to support our business community?
I think we alluded to that. I mean, Joel mentioned an officer being assigned to every client. It is not unusual, but I think there is a heightened degree of attention that gets paid to every case now, because it's very important for us to keep our finger on the pulse of things as they happen. So I think there's an unprecedented degree of access to the financial institution, to the decision makers. People are listening very intently and very keen to react very quickly to the information that is coming in. That is very important. So no longer can we afford to sort of dilly-dally around decision making, and take a long time about it, because the autonomy within this environment has a different sort of impact on the business than the environment that existed before. So I think the institutions are very conscious about time sensitivity and the flexibility that we provide as an item.
Okay. Any additional points to that?
It has also given us, in addition to what Stephen said, it has given us the opportunity to bridge the connectivity divide between us and our membership. Remember, you mentioned earlier about having reached out to them, and they're taking a long time to reach back to you with things that are affecting them. I think the urgency of now have compelled our membership to now even reach out to us even faster. And as a result, the time gaps between getting the information, making a decision, even approving loans have shortened significantly. And what we've also done is that we have also allowed our membership to now reach into those non-touch spots, like, for example, cards, online services, that they would have been a little afraid to try, or they might not have had time. People are now realizing that rather than stand in the line and stand 6 feet apart and wait in the sun early in the morning to get something done, that you can just go on CO online and do it, or you can go on NBD's More Banking and simply do a transaction. They're realizing that that is a lot of time saved, other than the fact of adopting the technology. And I asked one of our members a question. I said, if I was to pay you $10 to stand in the line in the sun, stand in the line and do a transaction, would you do it? He said, no. I said, so why is it that these financial institutions are offering you solutions, yet you're not doing it? But all of a sudden, now that I put it in a language that you understand, then you're realizing the importance of it. So I think it has allowed us, it has created the urgency, and it has allowed both sides, both from the management side of the credit units and also from the respondent side of the people who serve.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing this. Now, let's deep dive a little bit into the private sector and really understanding the challenges of the private sector access to finance. What do you think are the characteristics of your ideal clients? We're not going to speak about what's not happening, but what's your characteristics of what are the characteristics of your ideal client?
You sure these places will walk out when we get this?
No, because what we want to do is elevate the level of financing and accessing finance. So can you share with us?
Sure. My ideal client, I would say, is someone who actually understands their business. Not just a business idea, they understand everything of the business, how it runs, the market, where it's in, how they get new customers. Someone who spends time innovating. So you don't just have an idea and use it for the money, that's it. You keep on, and new ways to at least grow and improve the business. Someone who manages the finances, put them in. Of course, I know cash doesn't the profits, so you make sure that you assign your profits, your funds accordingly, and then you pay your bills on time, and you make sure you have some reserves for times like COVID or the barriers or what have you. So these are just some of the areas which we look for in terms of both new clients and the existing ones. Someone that really spends time knowing and growing the business in a nutshell.
Okay, so Stephen, would you have a client that's more ideal than this?
I don't know that I have a more simplistic view.
Okay.
I think my ideal client is transparent.
Okay.
What I mean by that is I see all clients as sort of a work in progress. From the biggest ones like the closer to small business person. The more you can share with me and tell me about your business, the more empowered that I am to help you. And I tell people all the time, it's not just about me doing business with you. So I have the occasion of speaking to people who have been very clear, lucid and transparent about what they're trying to do. And I said to them categorically, we cannot help you. But I'm going to call on your behalf, Mr. So-and-so of such an institution who is perfectly structured to help you. Maybe Phoenix, maybe Mr. Irish, and maybe someone else. But the point is, sharing of information puts me in a position to help. So my ideal client shares. They tell me everything, they help me understand what it is they're trying to do, and I in turn get to provide them with a solution. And here's the thing, nobody stays in the same place for all time. And I always believe that if I can help someone get through a certain stage, I will always have the opportunity to do business with that person in the future. So I have no qualms about referring business to the right institution, the right structure to assist at that time. Right? So transparency is key.
So we've mentioned, or you've mentioned, someone who understands the business, someone who's an innovator, someone who can properly manage their finances, someone who has some reserves so that they wouldn't just be in need at every point in every turn that they make, and someone who's transparent and shares the information. Now, will the Cooperative Societies League have a client that's more ideal than this?
I was trying to figure out whether we're serving the same people. We look at what I call the CKDs, commitment, knowledge, and discipline. Because if you understand the cooperative ethos, it was born out of somebody that has nothing, that we've pulled resources together to make lives better. So our commitment, our focus is not so much on the financial wealth and might of the person, but we look at the commitment. You have a vision, fine. Are you committed to seeing it through? Do you have in-depth knowledge, as I said? Have you done your proper research? You've seen businesses that have not lasted a couple of months because they just had a bright idea, they slept on the 45-degree angle of the pillow, got up excited, and decided they are going to put up a website, put up a Facebook page, they have a business, and that's it. No proper research. So commitment, knowledge. The second part is the discipline, which addresses all the issues of financial intelligence and knowledge, commitment to pay. So even if we work out an arrangement with you where we said you're going to pay $50 a day, and you come back to refinance and we said, okay, you're going to pay 20. There are some businesses that you can give financial support to, and as soon as you finish, they go and incur another loan. So you want to ensure that in addition to being committed, to being knowledgeable about your business, to being dedicated, to being disciplined, to seeing the business. And that we think is the recipe for success.
Okay. Well, I want to ask a question, and I want the show of hands. How many of you believe that access to finance is one of the greatest challenges of all businesses? Those on Zoom, you could also raise your hands as well. I'm seeing some persons have 2 hands up. 2 hands up. Anyone, some persons even put a foot up, a leg up, some 2 of them, because if not, you can't stand.
But it would be interesting to understand what is driving it.
So, well, that would be interesting. Maybe the DAIC would have to better collaborate with you all to understand how we can find even more solutions to access to finance. But what is your institution doing to solve the problem of access to finance? What are your institutions doing to solve this challenge? And what is the main challenge in businesses accessing finance?
Okay, there are a couple of things for us from the cooperative perspective. The first thing is records, record keeping. It is so insignificant in some people's mind, but it's critical, because how are you going to understand how your business is performing if you have absolutely no records? And you only find that out when a person comes in to ask for a loan and you say, listen, we need your financial statement. You're saying that you're making $16,000 a month. Where is your record? A lot of them, they don't bank, and neither do they keep a record under the mattress that they hold the money. So that is really the key. The second thing is, in access to finance, has been to an extent collateral. And this is something that we have been exploring different ways to see how is it that we can. A critical case, for example, is like the persons who are in the services center. Somebody, let's say my friend at the bank, I think he's the PRO. Yeah. He's into videography and promotion. You finished? Right. So I'm just saying, somebody within his area, services area, how is it that you're going to value the skill set and talent that that person had, and be able to quantify it to say, okay, we can give you a commitment of, we can give you a loan amount of $20,000 because you've gotten, let's say, $5,000 or $10,000 in character loan, and this is how we can quantify the rest of it. So collateral has been the biggest challenge for that for small businesses. So collateral, information, and I think that is, for me, would be the principal challenges. The rest of it, you can navigate.
Okay, so what was you? Well, we mentioned these two, which I think are common for all the institutions, but what are you doing to help solve this challenge? Are you doing anything as well?
So yes, we are doing things. Of course, one of the areas is training, and we do provide the training where to provide the records that you are required to have make sure that we can advance funds to you. So we partner with various organizations to make sure our clients and even the general business community is trained in the areas of business management, financial records, and what have you. And of course, in the area of collateral, we do say yes, it's a challenge, but I mean, if, for example, you have shown that commitment to your business, we see the records where you have actually been performing as you say you predicted, then there is no business that cannot take a chance and give you an unsecured loan. So we do that for those clients who not collateral. So it's not always the end all if you have no security. So it's all you as a client is encouraging the banks to be willing to provide you financing without security. It all comes back to what it's about discipline, about your commitment. So these are things which will help us decide as a security club is we take a chance on the business.
Okay, so we want to answer it just, I can time the next question to this. There are many innovative minds in Dominica, and we're moving to a more digital society, digital technologies. And this means that some businesses may not have the collateral, they may not have the financing, and this is a new type of business that can really help to transform our private sector. Kenny always speak about diversifying the private sector. So how are you supporting innovative minds and new businesses who want to get into new spaces, who may not have the collateral or the back end? They may not have a history of even financial records.
Yeah, getting into a new space, I mean, we basically don't have proof of concept, and that's always harder to sell. And that's where the question of collateral and those other questions factor in more heavily. And people always look to the financial institution and say, what are you doing to solve that? And one of the things that we have to recognize, the financial institution is not the answer to everything. And there has to be partnerships. There are other players in the market that jump in and help where that is concerned. So one example, the governments of Dominica, Antigua, St. Kitts, and Grenada, and New Zealand, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, has come together and put together what they call a partial credit guarantee scheme. And what that basically does is guarantee a portion of a small business loan, so that if that loan goes into default, the bank can claim, FI, actually not just banks, can claim against that guarantee and be made whole. Now, what does that do for the risk appetite of the bank? It opens that up because they have now a backstop, and they're in a better position to take that risk with the entrepreneur. So, say that to say that there has to be other mechanisms that are put in place by government and other policy institutions, ECB, etc., to assist with the problem. The banks are not going to have all the solutions, but when banks sign up to a platform like this, you have a partnership that is working on policy and brings a
things are really good. Let's tabulate your expenses and so forth. It's like you have this feeling like something bad is going to come out of it. And it's really an opening moment for us to see how our businesses are really doing. And that is why for us as a movement, we place such a premium on counseling for the members to ensure that they understand that even in a crisis such as now, that you can find ways to navigate. For example, there's been, while businesses in the formal sector have reduced some of their footprint, you'll find businesses in the services sector have ballooned. So persons who are doing advertising, persons who are doing website building, persons who are doing videography and promotions and so forth, those services, critical services, have been skyrocketed. And that is why, for example, Amazon CEO, his personal worth doubled within the same COVID period. And that is because of the fact that some of the businesses will flourish and some will not do so well. So it's important for us to introspect into our business and see where is it going, where the market, because the market sends signals. So we need to understand where is it that we're going. So for example, if the market is saying this and we need to innovate, we should not be afraid to innovate.
Okay, so as we speak about innovating and new ways of doing things, there are many, I would say there's some individuals in Dominica, and there could be even persons in the diaspora who would have excess capital that they may want to invest in some businesses here in Dominica. From the financial institutions, you would be able to see who would have excess capital. You wouldn't be able to disclose that to us, but how can we motivate these individuals, and what are you doing to help support more equity investment as opposed to just loans in Dominica? Or how can we? Maybe we may not be doing it, but how can we move? Just one more point, that we had the Eastern Caribbean Securities Exchange a few months ago at the Chonid luncheon, and we spoke to the need to not just look to loans, but how can we look for more equity investments? So how can you tie the two?
There has to be a lot of education. There's been a lot of that going on already. I can point to a few examples. The ECC has a saving and investment course, and FIs do things all the time. But the education is key, because what we have here is very much a savings culture. We don't have an investing culture. People feel a lot safer putting the money in the bank and letting the bank make the decision about who to lend it to, as opposed to making a first-hand decision as to where they will deploy their money. And it boils down to the sense of safety, right? The bank may make bad decisions, but you always feel like you can walk in there and get your money back. And there's a lot of truth to that, but it starts with educating people about investing, which is much more lucrative, by the way, than savings.
Yes.
But people are just averse to taking that risk. So we have to start pushing people in that direction. I totally agree. One of the things, incidentally, that will improve the access to loan financing is greater equity contributions, right? So the two things go hand in hand. So we have a lot of incentive if people will move away from the tradition of saving and start investing in business ideas. Now, to the point of the exchange, where is that central marketplace where if I am sitting on $1 million as an example, where I can go and see a list of projects, and typically investors might want to invest in something that they thought of. So I maybe media personality, and this is great media company coming up. And I want to put some money into that. But where is that marketplace? That doesn't exist, so we can look into that sort of infrastructure. The SEGS exists, but because of the requirements around listing and so on, it's quite expensive. And typically, you find only larger organizations there. There are plans to introduce a new market, but I think even on the local level, there can be some effort, and that's something that the chamber can probably help with as well, to create that central marketplace where investors and entrepreneurs alike, entrepreneurs present ideas, and investors that have the capital can run with ideas and make a choice as to what they want to invest.
So we're saying that DAIC could lead an ideas market, and we could allow for persons with excess capital to come to that, and maybe the banks could help to facilitate.
Yeah.
And well, I shouldn't say banks, the financial institutions could help to facilitate.
So possibly, but the banks are walking a very fine line because under the law, we're not supposed to give investment advice. Okay, so what you want is that neutral place where people can make independent decisions. We're going to be facilitating the transfer. Pay X dollars to whoever on my behalf. But we have to kind of maintain that Chinese wall between us and that transaction.
Okay, so Jewel, at the ECSC Chomid luncheon, I think MBD was in the process of becoming a support to a broker or some form of support in equity investments. Can you tell us more about that?
That is on the works. So we are planning to be an authorized broker for the exchange, so that whether you want to list your business on the exchange, or whether you want to float a corporate bond, or whether you just want to invest in the treasury bills or any investments on there, that we could act on their behalf. So plans are in progress for that, and very soon you should see announcement from us being an approved broker for the BCS.
Okay, thanks for sharing. Now, I know we have many stakeholders in the room. We spoke to COVID-19 and how that's affected both the private sector and the financial institutions. We spoke to more about the private sector and the ideal client and how we can support and all these areas. Now, we have our public sector partners who are in there and some online. We must recognize them online. But we want to understand what policies can enable you to boost the private sector. So what policies would make it better for financial institutions to enhance the support to the private sector? And I'm putting you in a tough spot right now, but there must be something that needs to be done to help you to provide enhanced support.
I don't think the solution is so much directly related to financial institutions as to the private sector institutions themselves. So, I mean, at the root of what we do every day is advocate for policy change and policy implementation that assists the private sector to thrive. And to the extent that those policies are being implemented, then banks will follow through because the businesses get stronger, they get closer to that state of being the ideal client, as we call it, and the access to finances becomes easier. So what we will encourage through the chamber is to continue that advocacy for the business people to give them real feedback to generate ideas that we can take to the government and the policymakers to make those changes that enable them.
Okay. Are there any, well, that should be
I just want to agree with Stephen, is just to make sure the policies and the frameworks to at least support the businesses. So, because sometimes you have things like marketing, market research are very cost effective. So long as the public sector provide that kind of a service to the small business to allow them to navigate finding new markets or even the market research to promote their business. So right you said, it's really how does the government, the public sector support the small business enterprises.
And they always, there's a popular refrain that says that the private sector is the engine of growth for the country, for the economy. And I think, what is it that we have been seeing? I remember having a meeting a few years ago when we said to the government that the private sector follows the lead of the government or the public sector. And what the private sector essentially needs is for an articulation of the vision or the strategic direction. And I'll give you a case in point. For example, we have the fact that we're looking to be the first climate resilient country in the world. And one of the things, for example, we've been talking about emission and so forth. One of those things, for example, I've seen some other countries do, where might give an incentive for persons importing new vehicles as against used vehicles. So, for example, if some of the tariffs would be reduced to facilitate that drive, you would find that some of the persons might be more inclined to import newer vehicles than older vehicles, which would transition nicely to the overall strategic vision of a more clean and greener economy. But one of the things that we have seen happening is that, for example, in our case, from the private sector perspective, and particularly still from the cooperatives, what we've seen, and Joel echoed it earlier, is that once we would have articulated that vision, we need to now begin to now move towards empowerment. And so once the persons are empowered through knowledge, training, seminars, and so forth, this is really going to give them the critical tools they need to drive the success of the business. Because if you look at it, access to finance everywhere, it's almost the same. One of the things that, as Joel mentioned, that we've been looking at and we've been researching, has to do with, for example, what do you call it, venture capital, where people can come together, pool, and you can have like this, we can have Silicon Valley in Dominica. We can have a kind of shark program here in Dominica, where people can come, young entrepreneurs can come and pitch ideas to a group of investors and have those ideas ventilated. The problem is not that we cannot have it. Within the current scope, we still can. We'll just have to articulate how is it that the contractual arrangement will be put in place. And a critical point would be, for example, intellectual property. So when all of those legislation regarding intellectual property and the persons will come up with a proof of concept, it means that that person's idea would not, they would not be afraid that they're coming out and share the idea and they cannot own it or have the right to that idea. And I think that is what is going to spearhead the members from those that were served and also the financial institutions to come together and partner with those individuals. Because I mean, we have to be open and transparent even with ourselves. But a lot of the financial problems in the country today cannot be solved by the financial institution. It has to be solved by the public, a partnership agreement between the public and private sector coming on board, special interest groups, stakeholders coming on board, each and every one of us playing our critical part to ensure that we move together.
Okay, well, now that you mentioned this, are there, some persons may say that the financial institutions have all that they need. Do you have all that you need, or are there support measures that financial institutions do need to be able to be more successful?
Right. So I guess you're pulling that out of So Felix mentioned earlier records, right? And if you're a registered business in Dominica, could there be some more rigor about reporting financial records to the Revenue Commission in this case, right? And if that were the case, would it be easier for FIs to have access to records when making financial lending decisions? Because a business, if quote unquote obligated to do that within a certain time frame, would have the information available to share. I talk about being transparent, but you cannot share what you don't have. And in a lot of cases, that is a real challenge. People just don't have the records. So I mean, there are things that we can do, but I think rather than forcing the hands, what we need to do is establish the value. And that's the messaging that the FIs take. To finish this point, I'll share a very real example. There was one person I know in a rental business, and had a small fleet of cars. And I said, "So how is the business doing?" "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, what do your financials say?" "Well, the loan gets paid from my salary, so I didn't really pay attention to that." And so you see the problem right there. Right? There is a salary income that is paying the monetary loans on the vehicles, and so there is no never mind to what is actually happening in the business. So if I have to make a lending decision on that particular client, I'm not in a position to, because they have no clue what is going on, right? And this is a reality for more entrepreneurs than we would appreciate. These are the types of conversations that we have almost every day. So it's a difficult situation that we just need to establish the value of actually keeping your records, studying your business, and understanding what's going on.
If I can just add to what Stephen said, one of the things that we have looked at as a cooperative and also even in conversations with the ECCB, we speak about the credit bureau. And the reason why something like that, we were talking about legislation and policy, it is so important because On one respect, if a financial institution, and this is where we think it can be one of the solutions by which individuals and businesses can have access to finance without having the collateral. Because if you have a high rating in terms of your low risk, you're very diligent in paying, that will be reflected in your credit score. And that is why we're saying that something like this will help, because in one case, it compels you to provide the information, to keep the information. And in another case, it gives the financial institution that comfort that this business is a low risk, because of the fact that they can now measure that risk based on your discipline, based on your diligence, how quickly you pay your loans, and so forth. And that is what I think is going to help the case whereby we have businesses that do not have the wherewithal or the capital or the collateral that is necessary to get it. Because if you have a high rating, let's say we're going out to 5 and you're above 4.5, a financial institution can take the risk and say, this person may not have a land from their power or what we call it, but they're very disciplined, they're paying back, and you can take a chance and give that person an unsecured loan. So those are one of the ways in which we can help the small businesses.
Okay, so is there a short answer that you could give to this question? Can we have a credit bureau in Dominica which is different from the rest of the OECS? Can we decide that we're going to do that in Dominica? Is it easy?
You can, but it's not ideal. Because one of the points that I meant to make earlier is we have to stop seeing the market as Dominica. I mean, we've been talking economic union for so long, the single financial space for so long. So we're moving towards that, and there is in fact harmonized legislation for credit bureau that has been passed in several countries. The pending countries now. That is closer than we might appreciate. But to finish this point, I don't want to get too technical, but in financial fundamentals, we talk about the 5 C's, the top of which is character. And if you're a good paymaster and you're a good character, that alone can carry you very far in terms of a financing request. But the issue is having access to that history, that validated history, that reports on your performance in terms of servicing debt obligations. And that is what the credit bureau will bring to the table. Very important. Very important point.
I have a little variance to the point as in, if it can happen, I believe in regionalism. Thank you very much. Right? Region and ism. Right? And I believe in that, but I also believe that sometimes, in an effort to get consensus, pretty much like curriculum, sometimes in an effort to get consensus and to have harmonized legislation in place, it is like pulling teeth, because each jurisdiction have political and social consequences to consider, and they have their stakeholders that have varying interests in what is being proposed. Now, in our case, can we have it in Dominica? Absolutely. Is it ideal? That is something for discussion. Because, for example, I believe personally that we have within our scope all of the necessary skills and talents that we need to set up something like that. Each country needs to now decide on, based on the level of urgency, if they need it. And one of the things that has been closer to us as a movement is, for example, if you look in the Kalinago territory, for example, you have persons in the Kalinago territory that are living on lands, but they cannot get a loan on that land because there is no ownership, you see? And so this is one of the things that we're saying that if somebody wants to come and get a loan based on the land that they occupy, on what criteria? Legislatively speaking, we cannot, because there's no, it will go against your proper diligence and so forth. But how is it that we can do that? And again, this is what answers that particular problem. That once we are able to establish the credit history, the discipline, the commitment, then we can take a chance. I believe at some point in time, financial institutions will have to take a chance on small businesses and big businesses for that matter of fact, because some of the most successful businesses in the world have been where somebody took a chance with them. And as a result, they are now global behemoths. So I think that at some point in time, we will have to take a chance, but we will also need the legislative support and cover to come and meet us halfway so we can go over, because there's liquidity in the market. And you mentioned there are other persons that have significant sums, but they would never. I mean, you would call them, even from the credit union or from the bank, you'd say, hey, you have a pre-approved loan, and what you say, no, leave it. They prefer earn 1.something% than take a chance with an aspiring entrepreneur and they're going to get, let's say, about a 7% return on investment. They prefer having it just because of the security. So we have to find mechanisms of which we can guarantee that level of comfort so that they can now take a chance on these budding entrepreneurs.
So thank you very much. So we're just narrowing down to our last question on this, and we'll open up for our members and partners who may have any question. And for financial institutions, we're still on time, so we just about ended. How can you partner with DAIC to increase access to finance? And what do you think DAIC can do more of to prepare our business community to be more of that ideal finance? So how can you partner? And what do you think DAIC would need to do to be able to prepare our members and our business community to be more of the ideal client from your perspective? Joel?
Well, from my perspective, DAIC, I guess I'm saying the idea of education again and again and again. But DAIC is a more focal point to make sure the members have been up-tooled in the business management and that in the economy and even access to the market. So there is a wide area of that the DAIC can train the membership on. And of course, we as a bank, we always need to partner with DAIC in those initiatives. Of course, there are other areas like how do you create the revenue to bring investors and entrepreneurs together. So, of course, we as a bank, we can do that directly. But the area of sponsorship or even partnership, we can play a match with that in DAIC. So again, I can overemphasize it's really the need to get the members to a point where they become this ideal client that we are looking for.
Okay, Stephen?
Okay, so Joel spoke to tool it up, and I think what DAIC could represent also is a network of expertise that can be leveraged by the membership. Okay? And say that to say that one of the challenges, people always talk about access to finance. Felix mentioned knowledge earlier. But what you have sometimes is an entrepreneur with a great idea who doesn't necessarily have the capacity to execute. So how can we act as that network who is going to link the entrepreneur with the idea, with the accountant, with the skill to do the financial reporting, the marketing expert who can help him actually sell that idea, with the operations expert who will help him operationalize the business, etc., etc. So I think the DAIC is that network for its membership and by extension the wider business community where that sort of activity can happen. So that when the request comes to the FI, we're seeing that whole mechanism and how it's working, and we're more confident that this will be something that can be successfully implemented because of the expertise we have.
One thing that I think that immediately comes to mind as we speak on the issue of data mining is statistics. A lot of businesses start up and they don't know what the market is saying. And that is why in DAIC's perspective, where you have a lot of your membership, small and large businesses, can provide you with vital statistics. So I'm thinking that immediately that DAIC can start up an initiative, get maybe some grant funding, get some seed funding, to see how is it that we can begin to provide critical data relative to the Dominica market. Because an investor would want to come in, and people would come to you and ask you a question, what can we invest in? Is this a good idea? I have an idea, is this a good idea? But what premise, what key factors do you use as determinants to say that, oh, okay, this is a good business, this is not? Because, I mean, we have central statistics that collect information to a certain level, high level on that side. But I think from our perspective, we need information based on small businesses. And it doesn't have to be information that is proprietary, something that reveals the secret sources of the business, but it can be general information regarding, let's say, sales, growth, employment, and so forth, businesses in general. So if we provide that information, you'll find that if somebody comes up now and decides, listen, I want to go into, let's say, for example, videography, you'll be able to tell them, okay, this is the market, this has been the average sales throughout, these are the gaps, perhaps you need to shape your niche in this particular area, all right? But there's no way for us at present to find it. So if DAIC can make a meal out of this grain, I think this is one area that is going to be important.
So if I didn't know the character of the man, I would say Felix hat, the business meeting. That's exactly one of the points that I articulated as a focal area for us moving forward. What I would add to that one, this is a challenge to the private sector now, is that when we make policy proposals and those changes are implemented, we need to feed back data to the policy makers, right? So they can see that those proposals and those changes are actually having a positive effect. And we're very shy about doing that, right? But what it does is it adds credibility, it builds credibility so that the next proposal goes through a little bit easier. And again, to present those proposals, we need the base data that is supporting what we're proposing, at least pointing us in a certain direction. So that's another important.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing this. And are there any burning questions that you would have, Kenny? Mike, you need a mic. There's a mic here so that anyone who would have any questions could.
Great presentation, guys. I want to talk about something you mentioned earlier, Phoenix, which is about venture capital. And I don't think Dominica and most of the Caribbean is suited for venture capitalists, because most of the venture capitalists have to have an exit. And apart from Jamaica and Trinidad, there's not really much of a stock exchange for you to go IPO or really get a safe exit for. I know
you heard it.
I heard it, but that's still a reason. I mean, you look at a typical VC exit at 40%, and then there's a structure. If you tell a Dominican that typically he will be able to lose control of his business within 2 to 3 years because someone was invested in it, they'll tell you, no, keep your money. But angel investment, and I want to ask this question because US banks, I know you're very confidential, I credit you, have access to the people who have the liquidity as depositors in your banks and institutions. How do you, and there is a possibility for the DAIC, for example, to sit in a marriage with you as institutions to say, let's put together a list of interested angel investors from your groups of people who back with you, who are willing discreetly to finance ideas and entrepreneurs who you cannot take on because of the lack of collateral and the lack of a solid foundation that you are willing to recommend because of the value of the idea. You've got people here, I mean, it's not often talked about, who have tremendous liquidity in the banks and are just sitting on it till death. And you have the ability to play that matchmaker role. And with us, if we bring you 2-3 people every 6 months, that's still 2-3 people who could turn into someone vital. And we often miss the boat by talking about Amazon and these large examples. We don't necessarily need that. What we do need are functioning entrepreneurs who can not just pay their bills, but employ people and be part of vibrant small communities and networks. And if we can do that, then we can be successful. So are the banks willing to partner and to be able to build those lists of maybe a small group of people who can release some of their liquidity as angel investors? What does VCs? Because it doesn't make really much sense.
Thank you so much, Kenny.
Just to add before Kenny leaves, is when I said angel, when I said venture capital is actually surrounding the same angel investor. The concept was that forming that cog between which you can get the persons who have the liquidity and those who need the support, and then provide that bridge between which they can now converse. So it doesn't necessarily have to be structure A or B. The important thing is that we recognize that there are gaps, and these are gaps that the financial institution, because of legislation, may not be able to fulfill. However, we have, as you said, the contacts, we have persons who, once they've consented and they're willing and so forth, now we can provide that level of support.
And Damien, who's been part of the board, was and is part of the board, has been part of in the past the Breakpoint. Actually, was one of the judges on Breakpoint, which was the Caribbean version of Shark Tank. And I don't think people understand for VCs. VCs in the capital world are seen as predatory because the rate of return, they're expecting 40% generally as an exit. How many businesses here as a young entrepreneur, if you're trying to establish businesses, but established businesses are not going to be a piece of the action for anyone because they have the liquidity. So it's really important for us to set aside the definition because the angel falls more into the almost accelerated or a grown-up version of Kuzma. But social. But we do need, you guys want to keep because you know who has the liquidity and being able to match make through the DAIC could possibly be another.
Thank you. Kira, see you next. Are there any other questions online as well? Did we see any questions online?
Sorry, recently, well, earlier this year, Kenny and I sat on a panel discussion for CREED, and one of the things that was raised was the financial institutions and the role that they can play in supporting small businesses. You know, I have a passion to support small businesses because they've always been cited and recognized as the engine of growth. One of the things that we had discussed in the question period afterwards was looking at opportunities for the financial institutions to support business planning. Both three of the panelists recognize that as a challenge that a lot of entrepreneurs and innovators face when they're coming to seek access to finance. So what I'm proposing is looking at a relationship where DAIC, we've actually had a very successful record-keeping workshop funded by, supported and sponsored by CIBC. But these are the sort of initiatives that I think, looking at what we've discussed today, I think it's a plausible direction to create a partnership between the DAIC and financial institutions even further to support our small business sector. So it's just something I wanted to throw, not so much a question, but to see if we can garner your interest to support the DAIC and our small business enterprises.
Thank you, Kira. Just make mention that CREED and DAIC partnered on the virtual MSME financial management training. So for anyone who's tuned in, if you would like to even receive the recording, it's online through our website and our YouTube page. And anyone can participate, submit the assignments, and CREED and DAIC will look at it and ensure that you receive certification to be counted as one of the companies who have this skill and can afford better access to finance, improving the access to finance. Are there any other questions online as well through the Zoom? There are no questions via the Zoom. Anyone in the audience? Yes, Kevin? Anyone else as well? We'll invite you to come closer to the mic so that I think after Kevin we'll take the last one more.
Good evening, everybody. I have a question for the panel, and it relates to capacity. I know a lot of our members, private sector persons, they have these great ideas, but they do not have the capacity to pull it off. I know Kira mentioned something in a financial workshop that's been sponsored by CIBC, but I just wanted to put it out to the entire panel to understand what is that you all are doing individually to raise private sector's capacity in order for them to be able to speak to the banks and be able to get these loans and this financial assistance.
Thank you very much for that intervention. For us, building capacity is ingrained in understanding on one side, as we mentioned earlier, understanding what is it that sparks the interest of the financial institution. So what is it that they look for? We mentioned a few of them earlier. What is it that they look for? And then from the small business side, how is it that the small businesses can now meet those requirements? A lot of times the small business entrepreneurs always ask the question, what are the banks doing? As if our banks are the financial institutions, they are not meeting me halfway. So a lot of times the financial institutions have significant restrictions regarding, for example, how they lend. Lending, whether it is a secure loan or unsecured loan. And so, for example, in our case for cooperatives, what we realize is that these financial institutions, these small businesses, the primary concern, one is access to finance so that they can build their dreams and what have you. The second thing for them is to, from our perspective, that we want to understand their business model, understand their level of commitment and discipline to ensure that the business succeeds, because we as financial institutions want the business to succeed because of the fact that they'll be able to repay, and secondly, we'll be fulfilling our corporate social responsibility by investing in their dreams and visions. So a critical part of building capacity is helping them to understand what makes you that ideal client for any financial institution. And a guy once told me, when he goes to interviews, he goes up, and how he gets interviewed, he doesn't say, I'm here to interview. He says, I'm here to bring to you a proposal. And if you're a prospective, if you're a manager, and somebody comes to you and says, hey, I would like to discuss how I can be of an asset to you or your institution, it would be a greater sell than you coming to ask the institution if they have any employment. And I'm using that to say that if you understand what are the things that the financial institution look for, then, for example, record keeping. So it doesn't matter how small your business is. You can keep records on a book, on your phone, or what have you. Record keeping is important. Understanding your business is important. And once you get to that stage, then it's easier to convince any financial institution to support you.
Great. So, Sheldon, and this will be our last question, final question.
Okay, great discussion, guys. I just trying to put something into perspective. I know from a financial institution standpoint, the records, the books, the numbers has to make sense to you guys, right? But I just want to know, in your departments that deal with engaging people, prospective entrepreneurs and small business owners, how important it is for you as financial institutions to have human resource capacity that can understand the dream, that can relate to the business aspect of an entrepreneur who has a dream and wants to try and pull something off, and not just rigid in the financial accounting practice as what traditional banks would have normally staffed up in a loan office. Because it's like my personal experience many months ago, like my locks was very short on my head. I can remember coming up, one of my friends, we set up a limited liability company and was looking to start off rental and tours operations. Very big in our concept, like how we wanted to go with it. And at the time, that was like maybe 2000, 2001, and nobody could not really relate in any of the banks that we went to, including, well, Stephen and them wasn't around at the time, but some of the present company is here also, you know what I'm saying? And fast forward to about 10 years later, someone maybe with those skill sets that I just talked about, putting a file cabinet, opening up a file cabinet, saw a business plan, and it's calling me 10 years later and asking me, like, what am I doing about this thing? Which I had done, like, put on the wayside and went down a different career path. So I just don't want that to happen to the next set of people coming up, and I just want to know from a financial institution standpoint, how are you preparing or setting up your staffing in the loans department, especially those that deal in small business, to be able to identify and see what good proposals are and act on.
Very important. I remember that particular question came at an AGM of one of our credit unions. And I remember, for example, in the case of NCCU, they have what we call a business development manager, business development officer. Because it was to understand, specifically to the point you're making, not just to look at the financial side of it, to see whether your ability, whether you'll be able to pay back and all of that, but to understand the concept. Because a lot of times, the proof of concept has not been developed. We would have had the vision, had the dream, would have done some level of research. And so the financial institution now have to look at that which you're pitching to them and see now how is it that they can now bridge the knowledge divide between what would be a welcoming initiative for them as a financial institution and what would be your vision and drive. So for example, in the case of the credit union, we put in a business development officer. And the business development officer is not there to say your business can't work. It's to listen to you hear what is it you want to do and give you ideas as to how you can carve your niche in that particular area. So sometimes you might have a good idea, sometimes it might be an unproven concept in Dominica, but it has worked elsewhere. So sometimes, a lot of times, it's just a matter of adapting it to the local market. And so that is what the business development officer will do. He'll sit you down, look at the concept, tell you where is it that you need to go, where they would recommend that you go, ask you questions, question the assumptions that you made regarding the success of the business. And that is what is going to help the financial institution to generate a proof of funds. I apologize if we were culpable back then when they launched the show, but I can assure you now that we appreciate everyone, those with short here and long here. So you can now approach credit union. You might not want to go back to the 2001 concept, but something that you have going forward. And if you cannot get any one of the managers, we have two of them sitting here. If you cannot get, come and find me.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for responding.
Sure, that is a very interesting scenario. I don't know that there is a structured solution to it. What I mean by that is Tesla was a bad idea. To some people, right? There was a lot of grinding that went into proving out that business model and making it into the success that it is today. And there are countless examples like that. So I think sometimes, whereas I get where you're going, we need open-minded people to bottom line and will listen at least and try to see where you're coming from. But the entrepreneur needs that tenacity to follow through and not shelve the idea. And I think that is an important and critical factor that is missing in a lot of entrepreneurs. So that's just a flip view of it, right? Don't shelve it, but continue and take it. If the financial institutions don't listen, take it to potential investors, take it as far as you need to go to get the thing actually right.
Okay, great. There's just one question we want to take online. We really would want to make sure we answer this. One of our members asked, it is said that training was one of the ways to address some of the issues of accessing finance from the banks. They're asking what training, where is it given to the individuals? So they really want to understand what training exactly that you had to support the small businesses. And after this, I think you would give it your final statements, and then we'll just wrap this up.
So I'll just start. So it seems like the person is interpreting that as there's some scheduled training that is happening. That's not what I think we're saying. Kira mentioned that we partnered on workshops. Like I just use that as an example. What we did is we brought in an accountant, and we also brought in a lawyer, right? Who the accountant obviously spoke to record keeping and practices that you put in place, whether services are accessible, what software you can use, all of that information is for business people. I mean, the lawyer obviously want to be perspective. What happens if I take a loan or if I take a partner? So we bring in the expert and we share the information which empowers the business person to act in the future. And we can continue to partner on those initiatives, create workshops and so on, and invite people like that's asking now to participate and learn. And once you do that, you'll be in a better position to present this.
I think one of the things we can take advantage of is now everything is going as well, and we're recording it and chronicling it. So a lot of things happened in the past, and we have no record keeping of these trainings. So I think even as the chamber and financial institutions, we need to have record keeping of our trainings. Yes. So that would be an opportunity, and thank you, member, for asking this question. So your final statements?
Okay, so thank you, listeners. So it's just to encourage all of us entrepreneurs to make sure they continue preparing a business for the future. So you don't just plan for the now. We plan for the medium and the long term. Yes, we know that COVID-19 is now the top of the town, but how are you planning to capitalize on opportunities beyond COVID-19? So planning is just a short-term thing, and it is also be a long-term thing, and to also be reviewed to reflect the times as affecting us. So, and of course, we as a bank, we stand ready to work with you to support you throughout that planning, through that transitioning, through that growing. Just to say that Stephen mentioned the guarantee scheme, we as NBD, we have signed up to be allowed to be able to grant credit based on that guarantee. So we are willing to accept those proposals from these policy holders. who would need that support from the government scheme to see their business through.
Just want to say that we're here to help. I will vote for myself and my competitors and
Partners,
I think it's important for people to understand that. First and foremost, we're here to help. We want to help. The notion that banks are averse to lending is completely false. That's how we make money. We want to make money, and we want to help businesses make money. So we're here. Let's be transparent and share as much information as we can, and we'll give you the best support that we can to get your business going.
Just to bring back what we said earlier, it is important that we do not let this crisis go to waste. And we need to re-examine our businesses, examine our model, examine how is it that we're doing our strategic direction, and do some high level of introspection and see where is it that you can take your business to extract significant benefits from it. The proof of concept is already there for the credit union model, because unlike, for example, the other financial institutions, our model is based on persons coming together and helping. And so that is why, for example, it brings us even closer to home to assist you in that regard. And for us, though sometimes our hands may be tied in some respects, there is still a high level of latitude for which you can go to any one of our 25 locations around the island and ask a question. And like I said before, if you go to a credit union, if you cannot get an appointment, come to the league's office. You can ask to see me. It's a walk-in thing. You don't have to get an appointment. And I will sit with you and give you directions and even call up one of my colleagues and get an appointment for you. Because we understand that our success is intrinsically tied to your success. And unless you succeed, the movement will not succeed. The domestic economy will not do that.
Very well. Thank you so much to you, Phoenix, of Phoenix Belfield of the Dominican Cooperative Societies League, and Mr. Irish is here, as well as Mrs. Watt as well. Yes, the mask I couldn't see. Then we have Mr. Joel Dennis of the National Bank of Dominica, Mr. Stephen Manda of the Swiss Caribbean International Bank, for providing your perspective as to how we can improve our private sector. I just want to reiterate the ideal client, and maybe that could be one of our key takeaways in going. The ideal client understands the business. So I want you to ask yourself these questions as we speak. Do I understand my business? Am I an innovator? Am I managing my finances properly? Do I have any reserves for my business in case something happens? Am I transparent, and do I share information with my financial institution? Well, there are three of them. Am I committed to different things in my business and to the growth, the future that I envision? Am I knowledgeable of what I need to be aware of? And am I disciplined? Discipline would help in a number of areas. So if we do ask ourselves these questions, that would really help us to be able to improve more businesses. But we also saw that there's a role for Okay, so we'd like to thank Phoenix as you are sitting, and we'd like to thank you for participating. Mr. Joel Dennis. Mr. Stephen Lander. And, well, Ms. Gina Sabra, is there anyone from Republic Bank who is represented? Okay, no, we'll ensure that they receive it as one of our sponsors. And we'd like to invite Mr. Kenneth Green as our past president, immediate past president. So, Kenny would like to open this up and so that everyone can see this one. It was done by one of our members. It's a card holder, and it's being described in this. We'll just show the others because we really want you to understand what our membership does. So this is done by one of our members. It's inscribed DAIC, and we thank you for participating in our 2020 annual charity meeting.
But before we end, I'd like to ask Mr. Unity to dedicate that duty was to, I shouldn't say was, she's not that good, to a role model, a mentor, someone who encourages me to be myself and let my input advance the business. I am privileged and so elated to be part of the organization under the leadership and stewardship of this people.
It's not promotion.
Yes, so Brenton.
Options. Good night, everyone. We would like to say thank you to Mrs. Esther Thomas, Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Trade, Commerce, Entrepreneurship, Innovation, Business and Export Development. We would like to say thanks to Ms. Lisa Valmore, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Tourism, International Transport, and Maritime Initiatives. We would also like to say thank you to the outgoing members of the Board of Directors and also the incoming members of the Board of Directors. We are going to do our best to bring value to our membership in this current term. I believe you understand that we are very open in what we do, so feel free to have those frank discussions with us. That is what we're here for. We would like to say thank you to our members who are present with us tonight. And it's because of you members that we are an association. And if you are not a member yet, we would like to encourage you to have a conversation with Israel to become a member. Because we can only really make an impact when we have the feedback from you all to bring it up. We would like to thank our panelists. I believe they deserve a round of applause again. Well, Phoenix, Stephen. It's really rare to see the competition sitting that close. So I believe that they did a very wonderful job. We would also like to thank Israel, who I believe was an excellent moderator for this. Our sponsors, we want to thank you as well. National Bank of Dominica, Dominica Corporate Societies League, Republic Bank, and First Caribbean International Bank. This event would not have been possible without your kind gesture. Thank you. The media partners, of course, we must thank you because it's because of you we can counteract negativity and put forward positivity in our market, which we strive for. Unite, Sheldon Cassidy, you brought a wonderful question this evening. We want to thank you as well. River Cinema for providing us with this excellent area where we can conduct such a meeting. We want to thank Todas, Nabila, George, Rigor, Vanessa, Lisa, Winston, and we saw one of our products this evening. Everyone who made everything possible for the association this year, tonight, and who will continue to contribute towards the association going forward, we say thank you and thank you in advance. All the attendees via Zoom and Facebook, and if it's one thing that we have learned from COVID, we can adapt if we put our mind to it. So thank you for making the effort and joining us wherever you are, whether it's at home washing dishes while your food is on. We also want to say a special thank you to Atubel Trading, who assisted us with some of the beverages we have behind it. All in all, thank you to everyone. This is definitely the start of a journey where we will seek, as I mentioned, to bring as much value as possible to our members and also seek to represent as many more people in the private sector, because it is our aim to boost the economy of Dominica through the private sector. It is possible, but it is only possible through the partnerships that we establish with you and with our corporate partners in the market. Be safe, sanitize, wash your hands for 20 seconds, wear your mask, and good night, everyone.
Yes.